Hi, I'm Chef Gail Sokol and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're making a mixed berry cobbler. Now, a cobbler is a very easy fruit dessert. If you have company coming and you have some fresh fruit or frozen fruit, time to make a cobbler. It's basically a biscuit topping that goes over fruit and it's baked in the oven. Super easy to put together. You can put it together probably in less than 20 minutes. So I've taken a 9 by 9 inch square pan and I've sprayed it with nonstick cooking spray and set it aside. I have preheated my oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Yes, you heard that right. That's a hot oven. And cobblers, especially with a biscuit topping, biscuits tend to be baked at a higher temperature. And you know where cobbler got its name? Because it looks like cobblestones. So we are actually not going to roll out our biscuit dough. We're actually going to scoop it out with an ice cream scooper. So first you start with the biscuit method of mixing. You get your dry ingredients. I have 3 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. If you want to change it and do some different flours in here, whole wheat or spelt or anything you want, you can do a little bit. Don't do too much because you do need the gluten-forming proteins to create structure. All right, and here I have 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. That goes right in there. I have 1 1/2 tablespoons of baking powder. That's our chemical leavener. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. That's going to go right in there. And then I take my pastry blender and I'm just going to use that as a whisk to get all the dry ingredients combined. A lot of people don't do that. And if you don't get all the dry ingredients combined properly, you're not going to end up with a properly risen cobbler or biscuit topping. So once that is done, we are not going to mix in the butter completely. We're going to cut it in. And this is 6 tablespoons of very cold butter that I've cubed. I like unsalted butter because then I can control the salt. And you're going to cut it in. And that's a cutting motion. You push down. And most recipes, when they say cutting, you'll know what that means. If you don't have a pastry blender, you could do it with your hands, or you can do it with a fork and knife. You really want to keep your hot little hands out of it because our body temperature is pretty warm and it can melt the butter. And if you melt the butter, you won't have these little pea-sized pieces, and that's what I'm going for. Pea-sized pieces of butter. You don't want them completely blended in because we want a little bit of flakiness in our cobbler topping, in our biscuit topping. And this is a very typical biscuit method of mixing. And it's known as the biscuit method of mixing. If you say it really, really fast, like 20 times, it doesn't come out as the biscuit method of mixing. It sounds really weird. So you're just going to clean off your pastry blender until you get your pea-sized pieces, and I'm almost there. And once I have my butter in pea-sized pieces, you need to add some sort of a liquid. And that would be an enriched dairy, usually. It can be buttermilk. In this case, we're going to add whole milk. You can also add heavy cream. And you can add other milks as well. So anything you want. So I have 1 cup of whole milk plus 2 tablespoons. And I'm going to get my big spoon. And this is where you don't want to overmix. I'm going to pour that in there. And it's not going to come together as a perfect dough. It's going to be wet. It's going to be a little sticky. But that's what we want. All right. So once we get the milk to absorb some of the dry ingredients, we're going to stop mixing, and then we're going to attend to our fruit. So you can do this with mixed berries. I've also done this with sliced peaches. You don't even have to peel them. You can do this with apples, plums, anything you want. Rhubarb and strawberries, whatever's in season, whatever you feel like. It could be frozen, it could be fresh. And you really want to season your fruit with some spices of your choosing, and I'll show you what I like to use. And you can see this is sort of a dry mixture. And you want to gather it gently. You're not going to over mix too much, but you can see it's sort of dry. And if you feel it is too dry, and sometimes it will, but you can add a few more drops of milk or even water. And sometimes it needs that. It depends. All right, you just want to get all those dry pieces from the bottom of that bowl. If you see any dried pieces of flour, just get that incorporated. It may take a minute or so. So I have a bunch of mixed berries. I have 3 cups of a combination, any combination you want. I didn't even measure them. I just sort of poured them into a measuring cup. I have raspberries, I have blackberries, I have strawberries. And if the strawberries are really big, you're going to cut them in quarters. All right. All right, I'm going to set that aside. So here are my berries, and I'm going to season them with a tablespoon of brown sugar. I like light brown sugar. You can use granulated if you want. A tablespoon of cornstarch, because berries are mostly water. They're going to give off a lot of water, so you want a thickening agent. I have a half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon and a half a teaspoon of ginger. And I added half a teaspoon on the recipe. You can add whatever you want. You can even add up to a teaspoon if you really like one or the other. So do whatever you feel. And then you're just going to toss these. You're just going to toss them until they're coated, because you want that cornstarch and all those beautiful spices to get in and around every berry. And I can actually smell it. It's very fragrant. And we're just going to actually pour this into our prepared pan. Very easy. So here we are. So this is a 9-inch square pan. You can actually increase this recipe. Oh, I can really smell the cinnamon. It smells good. And just spread it around. And then I'm coming back to my biscuits. You can actually take a little piece of biscuit and put it on there, or you can, like I said, ice cream scooper it. Ice cream scooper it, I think I just made up a new word. So I'm just going to take a little bit here and then just sort of put it down like a biscuit over. All right. And you can make them as small or as big as you want. Remember, it's supposed to look like a cobblestone. And you can serve people like 1 biscuit, depending on how many people you have. You could serve 2 biscuits if you really like your biscuits. But this should serve probably 6 to 8 people. But in a pinch, if you add some vanilla ice cream as an accompaniment, or some whipped cream, you can feed a good number of people, even with a small amount. So it sort of looks like a cobblestone that you might want to eat. So that's really good. And then what I like to do is I like to sugar it. And if you want, you can even add some spices into the sugar that you want to go on top. It doesn't have to look pretty. This is not a fancy schmancy dessert. This is sort of a people's dessert. You know, like you got a bunch of friends or family coming over and you just want to have a get together, right? Little barbecue, little evening out. If they're not fully shaped, don't worry about it. And we're just going to scoop them out. But it does look like a cobblestone, sort of like a pavement that you would walk on in the old days and twist your ankle because you got stuck between the cobblestones. I don't know how they walked in those days, I'll tell you. All right, I'm going to keep going. This makes quite a number of biscuits. Now, some people like to make their biscuits ahead, meaning on a sheet pan. They actually put them on a parchment papered sheet pan, and they make their biscuits like that. And then they put them on the baked fruit, so they bake it separately. I know for a fact Bobby Flay does that. You didn't hear it from me. But he makes a really good peach cobbler, and I've made it, and you make the biscuits separate. And that way they don't get soft, but some people like them like this too. See how pretty that looks? All right, I'm just going to finish up my biscuits. Wherever there's a space, put them in. All right. Last one, I think. I'm going to move you over. All right. And that's what we got. Now I'm going to take a little extra sugar and sprinkle it over the top. And I'm going to bake this in my 450-degree oven for 15 to 17 minutes. If they get too dark and brown, you're going to cover it with a piece of foil very lightly. So keep an eye on it. But the fruit should look nice and bubbly. All right, you're not going to use all that sugar. Just go as much as you want. So I'm going to put this in the oven for about 15 to 17 minutes. So I think my cobbler's ready. Let's take a look. The fruit should be bubbly. The biscuits should be nice and brown. Oh my goodness. Oh, yes, yes, baby. Look at this. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's just, oh, and I smell the berries and the cinnamon, and it screams for vanilla ice cream or whipped cream. Oh, yum. You'll want to let this cool down for a few minutes before you serve it, or even at room temperature. I hope you make this mixed berry cobbler. I hope you become a subscriber. Till next time.